Shalosio Yatzareo. It's your brother, your cousin, your nephew, young IUIC, reporting live on behalf of the Master of Breath, Isakere Messi, also known as Aye, Asher, Aye, to complete your awakening and to let you know that despite what they told you, your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness and your law is the truth, not theirs. Listen, the reason I'm on here, and I suppose for some of you it would be most appropriate to say Shabbat Shalom, because I understand that this is a day when many Black Hebrew Israelites do as the Jews do, and they keep the Sabbath, the Saturday Sabbath. And I am not coming down anyone's throat about it. I am going to do future presentations about what problem there may be there, all right? But I'm not going to broach that subject today. So I come to you on your Sabbath, as opposed to the lunar Sabbath, which my ancestors kept as recently as 200 years ago, all right? And you say, who are my ancestors? This stream is really addressed to Black Hebrew Israelites. I come to you on your Sabbath, the Sabbath that you accept, the Sabbath that you designate, the Sabbath that you embrace. And I'm sure you have many full-throated arguments against the lunar Sabbath. I am very confident that you do. I'm very confident that you are well equipped for that debate. We will have that debate another day. I am very eager to get to it. I'm just not eager to get to it today because we have something else that I want to talk about. But for Black Hebrew Israelites, that's who I'm speaking to. I'm doing this stream today because it perturbs me at this juncture that you. Well, let me back up, because I know because I started to say one thing and then I jumped off that onto a tangent that I frequently do. I know that for Black Hebrew Israelites, I know that in this circumstance you would say you would assume that the ancestors of whom I speak are, of course, the ancient Yatzarali. And yes, of course, the ancient Yatzarali are our ancestors, which is why I invite you into the stream, brothers and sisters. I'm eager to and let me just say, I love those of you who organize and do what you do. I have no problem with the organized Black Hebrew Israelite institution. I have nothing against the Black Hebrew Israelite organizations that are out there. I appreciate the work that you are doing. I believe that you are doing a great work that is absolutely led by the anointing of the Most High. You're wondering, why do I say Isakere Messi? Where is that in Scripture? I am speaking of her according to the name that she was given within recent centuries by my more recent ancestors. When I mentioned my ancestors before, yes, I know you were thinking ancient Yatzaralim, which of course we share as that ancestral connection, but those to whom I referred were specifically the Creek Indians. Creek Indians, who referred to her as Isakere Messi. Isakere Messi. And before you get on to me about the whole gendering of Adonai Yahweh Elyon, let me remind you that El Shaddai is in fact feminine. But we'll go into the whole femininity of we'll go into the femininity of the Master of Breath another time. Anyway, my point is this. I bring this to you. I bring this to you not to be facetious. Let me go on ahead and unpack who I am for those who don't know. I am Shaman IUIC, and my heritage is comprised of mostly Creek Indian, Muskogee Confederacy, Chiefy, Indians of the Negro Mound in Georgia, and possibly Eugene, but those Eugene would be more likely mixed with or entirely Cherokee rather than Eugene Indian, and then also Pamunkey Indian, and then lastly, Bete Israel, the so-called Ethiopian Jews, Congo slaves. I have all the information on. For those of you, I know there are many who challenge the whole transatlantic slave thing, or you challenge how all of that went down. Yes, I have all my information on that. I have, the slaver, the family name, the name of the ship, the name of the ship's financier, the names of the sellers, the buyers. I have all that. I have all of that information. And when they were deeded to someone else as part of a marriage arrangement between two prominent families, I have all that information. I tracked these people from. I tracked my ancestors all the way back to the Congo. So yes. That is part of my heritage as well. Now, I say all that to say I want to make sure that I am completely transparent about who I am before I go into what I'm talking about, because what I'm talking about to Black Hebrew Israelites today, particularly organized Black Hebrew Israelites, Israel United in Christ, IUIC, and Sikari. I am talking to these organizations because, and I'm talking to those who adhere to the teachings of these organizations, because what I'm talking about is heritage. Chiefly when it comes to Native Americans and Latinos. I do also have extended family that on my wife's side. I should say I have extended family in law that is Puerto Rican. And I speak Spanish. We speak Spanish in my house, and they speak Spanish on that side of the family as well. But keep in mind also that my wife is her hair grade is the exact same as mine. And she is the same shade of brown as me. Just as dark as I am, if not in the face, a little darker. In the arms, I'm a little darker. But I say that to say, this actually gets directly into what I wanted to talk about. I am saying that to reassure you that my wife, and listen, actually, let me not even go there. Let me not get ahead of myself. Here's the thing. There are people in these camps, in these organizations that are very laudable for the work that they do, by the way. Absolutely. Truly laudable for the work that they do. But these people are disconnected from the heritage and can only trace their way back through Ketuvim of our ancestors, of course, the writings of our ancestors, and of Nabi, Torah, the prophets, the instruction, the law, right? There are some of us who trace something a little bit more intimate and a little bit closer to our modern identity, which is our immediate bloodlines, which happen to be in many cases, most cases I think, indigenous bloodlines on this continent. We have that history. It is our history. Let me show you this. Because I'm trying to get you to recognize who you're talking to and who's talking to you. Alright? I want you to know what's going on. I see you as recently as this past month going out and evangelizing, proselytizing Native Americans and Hispanics to tell them that they are a part of the congregation of Yatzarel. You are telling them that they are Yatzarel. And I want to parse that. You should know where I'm going with this. You should know where I'm going with this. It is not that simple. And I think a lot of you know that. But you're not delving into this any deeper because you don't have a genealogical connection to what we're talking about when we talk about Native Americans and when we talk about Latinos. You don't have a genealogical connection. Even if you don't believe that you are indigenous to the Americas, you may not be. I'm not going to tell you what you are. You may be. Your ancestors may have, every single one of them came from Africa. Okay, all right. That would be uncanny. That would be absolutely uncanny. But if that's what you believe, okay, all right, it's cool. No sweat off my back. I respect your opinion. I respect your position. I respect that. However, my question is, what genealogical research have you done to verify your origins? You must do your genealogy. You must do your genealogy. And the reason why I say that, if neither you nor any other member of your family has done genealogy to verify the origins of the bloodlines from which you descend, then you can't really be sure that you're a part of what you claim to be a part of. You understand what I'm saying? Of course there is this likelihood, but you're also attributing your descent to this whole idea that you're a part of a specific tribe and everything, and there's absolutely no way you could possibly know those things, right? You don't know what tribe you come from. Surely you can't genuinely believe to talk about this, you certainly can't describe that same logic to Latinos and Native Americans. Listen, there are cases when you talk to a quote-unquote Native American and he looks like me. And I don't have a problem with what you say to that individual. That's fine. And I think that you have a firm enough grasp on the origin of the American Indian who descends from Yatzaréel. And the reason I say it that way is because let me point this out. I've done content, I've presented content on this channel that speaks to exactly what I'm about to talk about. And I'm about to be releasing, my very next presentation actually is about to address this. For those who don't know, my presentations are not live streams. My presentations are separate from the live streams. I do presentations, usually try to aim for less than half an hour, where I tackle specific mainstream evidence of the identity of the Negro. Negro identity is, of course, the most complex ethnic identity on the planet, by far. In my opinion, more so than that of the Uyghurs, more so than that of the Kurds, more so than that of the Rohingya. There are many complex identities out there, but this is the most complex identity. This is the most complex identity. I'm telling you. Now listen. What I'm saying is, listen. There is Second Esdras is where I see you guys go to talk about how ancient Israelites, the Yatzai, traveled from Asia to America, which you believe is our source, all of which is not actually accurate. But I don't quibble with that because we arrive at the same conclusion at the end of the day anyway. At the end of the day, the point is what? The point is Yatzaréel is in America and has been for thousands of years. Before Columbus got here, Yatzaréel was here. And at the end of the day, that's what we agree on, right? We agree on that. Second Esdras is a fake book. I've demonstrated that on my channel. I will talk more about that in the future. Second Esdras is not legit, all right? It's not legit. But the general gist is, and please take the time to browse at least a little of my content so that you can know why I say some of the things I'm saying. I can't break down every single thing that I'm going to say because there's a lot of connections to draw. But I am constantly making content to help draw these connections. And I retrace these connections multiple times in different presentations, specifically so that I just did a live stream where I was trying to sew up how we can know what happened in the history of quote-unquote Native Americans, how they split, how American Indians split into black and white. I demonstrated that connecting dots from multiple past presentations all in one live stream just to kind of give it. I do stuff like that. I will do reviews on certain points, but the issue is that Second Esdras, as I've covered in previous presentations, is not it was not written by anyone inspired or receiving a word from, a revelation from the Master of Breath. The Master of Breath did not speak any of the words that you find in Second Esdras. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That just didn't happen. It would take me too much time, though, in this live stream. It would detract from my topic too much for me to explain how we can know that. That takes a lot of work. Suffice it to say, Second Esdras, at least the part you go to demonstrate where the Yatzaralim, how the Yatzaralim got to America, of course. And I know for many of you, let me just speak to those of us who already know we're indigenous. We know we're indigenous. We know we're from this land. And I know that there are many of you who say, yo, we did not migrate from Asia to America. Yatzarael was always in America. We did not have to migrate here from any other continent. This is where we're from in the first place. I understand why you say that. And let me tell you this. Your theory on Yatzarael being originally from America will be further explored on this channel. And you will get further evidence to support your points on this channel, but not from me. From Hiloha Naniwaya, who will be doing presentations about exactly that very soon. Mirror world theory. Mirror world theory. She's going to be presenting that to demonstrate to you how we can arrive at the conclusion that you've arrived at, but how we can tie all the loose ends up on that. It may add some additional questions, in my opinion, but because she and I, we do not agree. We do not agree. But it's okay. Here's the truth. We can arrive at the same conclusion either way, whether Yatzarael was always here in America or whether it was in what they call the Promised Land in Asia today, which is now occupied by multiple countries, not just the state of Israel, but multiple countries. That land, whether it was that land, or it was in Utah, or it was in Peru, whether it was in Virginia, whatever. Either way, please understand that we arrive at the same conclusion about who the Yatzaralim are either way, right? Now, that's just an aside. Let me get back off my tangent to readdress Black Hebrew Israelites who almost unanimously agree that the Promised Land was in Asia. I am a mainstream source guy. All the information I bring on my channel, me personally, I bring using mainstream sources. Mainstream sources. All day, every day, I do mainstream sources. That's what I do, okay? I bring mainstream sources to the table because I want to prove that we can demonstrate our identity without having to leave out or negate any of the sources that governments and trusted institutions all accept. I want to be able to present. I present information that can be easily distilled and presented to Congress or to the state of Israel's Zionist program. In any case, what we're talking about is that, you know, you use Second Esdras, Black Hebrew Israelites. I've seen the IUIC, I've seen Sikari use Second Esdras to demonstrate that American Indians are just Israelites, Yatzaralim, who traveled from Asia to America, migrated from Asia to America. And as I said, Second Esdras is not a book that you can actually trust. However, the part of it that you're using when you're reading Second Esdras chapter 13 when you're looking at that, when you're talking about that, and that chapter and most of the chapters in the middle of this book, the body of the book, were written by a Jew. Were written written by a Jew. And this Jew was taking information that was common knowledge amongst our ancestors in Judea at the time. But he wrote it after the destruction of the temple. That Jew who wrote it was not Ezra. All right, it just wasn't. It was not Ezra. I demonstrate this in other words, all right, in other presentations, but I just don't have time. I can't. In any case, it's true. He arrived at that conclusion because it was a conclusion already held by many Yatzaralim in Judea, and not for no reason. There was a reason why they thought this, and in my upcoming presentation, I am going to fully unpack why they thought this, why they had good reason to believe that that certain members of the northern 10 tribes had gone to Arsarit. This guy who writes Ezra, he oversteps. His information is coming down many generations late, and he exaggerates the information that was held as part of the folk tradition of Yatzaralim in the late classical antiquity. He gets hyperbolic with it when he starts speaking of Arsarit, and when he starts speaking of how they got there and all of that stuff. That's all insert from him, and he claims that it is delivered to him as a vision, but he did not receive this as a vision. Everything he's talking about is common knowledge that he has embellished. Now, it was common knowledge before Christ. It was common knowledge before Yeshua. Okay? And I'm not going into anything having to do with Yeshua in this story. Now, the issue about this is it all comes to a head with what I see you guys presenting today. At the end of the day, what we can agree on is yes, they did come to America. Yatzaralim were in America when colonization began. We all may disagree about how we got here, whether we were already here or for time immemorial, or if we had to migrate or not. And if we did have to migrate, what was the nature of the migration? Where were we coming from? And how did we get here? All of that we disagree on. But yes, we were here. We were here. That's what we agree on. And the issue with that I take with IUIC and Sikari and all of these other organizations is that they're trying to suggest that Latinos and Native Americans are people who are our people, and that they need to be assimilated. Now, listen, everyone needs to assimilate, including the white, the pale, the colonizer. He needs to assimilate too. He needs to assimilate too. Everybody needs to assimilate. Torah is Torah, and all should assimilate with it, and they will when they follow it. But the thing is, I see oftentimes that this message is being delivered to Hispanics and Native Americans who are white. Understand that Hispanic is not a color, and Native American is not a color. They're the same thing. And in both cases, you have to understand the Native American. First of all, I'm not a Native American. Why do I say that? Because I am not a carded tribal member with citizenship in a tribe, nor do I live on a reservation or any of that. I am not a carded tribal member. I am not a carded tribal citizen. Unlike my great-great-grandfather or my great-grandmother, both of whom tribal citizens. I am not. All right? So I do not qualify as a Native American. I am a descendant of Creek Indian freedmen, but I am not a Native American. I am, however, an American Indian. Native American is a legal designation. A legal designation for an ethnic group, for a segment of an ethnic group. And while I'm a part of that while I am a part of the ethnic groups that are lumped into that, I am not a part of the segment that is designated by that term, Native American. That is a much more specific and very narrow demographic. So that is not me. And that is what I want to point out to you when it comes to Native Americans, whom you seem to be attempting to recruit. When it comes to Latinos, who you seem to be attempting to recruit. Okay? We need to talk about the fact that these people, if they are white, you need to look at their complexion. You need to look at their complexion. And sure, I would think surely you already knew this, but time and again, you seem to demonstrate that you don't know. You preach to them on the street, and I hear you tell them. I hear you tell them. In fact, we're gonna look at it. We're gonna see some clips from. We're gonna see some IUIC clips, and we're gonna look at the Native American component and the Hispanic component, because I want to see what you guys. I want everybody to see what you guys, who you guys are pointing at. Which Native Americans, which Hispanics are you pointing to? Because it matters. It matters. It very much matters. All right? And we're gonna need to talk about this because no, they are not part of the congregation of Yatzarel, and you're leading them to believe that they are part of and have birthright citizenship in the congregation of Yatzarel, which they do not. They do not have any such thing. Let's look at a clip. Hold on. I'm trying to think of how I want to do this. I think I want to explain myself a little better before we take a look at it. And I think what I'll do is because I have more than one clip to show, but I think what I might do is just show all the clips that I have in a row. We'll just show them all. I'll just present them all so that we can all see what we're talking about real quick. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. I'm just gonna show you all the clips, and I want you to reflect on the following before I do so. In Deuteronomy chapter 23. Chapter 23, verse 2. You find it said, a bastard shall not enter the congregation of Yahweh, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of Yahweh. I want to define what a bastard is. Mamzer. And of course, I gave you the verse. You know how to use Blue Letter Bible. Go look it up. Mamzer is the word, though. And what you find is that this is someone whose parent, I think it even says whose mother, is not an Israelite. It really doesn't matter if it's mother or father. Either or. But it's key that it says mother in particular. In the reference. Someone whose mother is not an Israelite. Now, there is very likely Jewish influence, late Jewish influence, rabbinic Jewish influence on that take. But the general definition of this word is the same either way. Someone who has one Israelite parent as opposed to two is a Mamzer. And a Mamzer cannot enter the congregation of Yahweh. Do you get where I'm going with this? Both of your parents must be Yatzarali for you to be a part of the congregation of Yatzarel. Now, the congregation of Yatzarel, this is this is the blood body. This is the blood body of the nation. It is the core of the identity of the anointed people. Make sense? Here's the thing. The anointed people today are not of pure blood anymore anyway, right? We are actually a people who have been mixed to varying degrees. Maybe not much, but it is also very difficult for us to know how much, right? It's difficult to calculate. So those of us who are those of us who, you know, do your genealogy, your parents both are identified as African American. You don't know of any admixture in their blood, so-called African Americans, right? Black. You have two black parents. And as far as you know, you don't have any you don't have any non-black relatives that precipitated it. Your grandparents are black as well, right? Your great-grandparents are all black. Okay, well, at this point, you are firmly within the congregation of Yatzarel. Well, let me explain how this works, because there's probably still some admixture from something in you somewhere in your bloodline, and that's just a mathematical fact. And this is how genealogy works. No one is purely anything all the way back. And so somewhere you should expect that is the case. There is a debate on my father's line, on my father's side, about one bloodline that may or may not lead back to the slave master in South Carolina. I know what plantation we're talking. We know the plantation. We know the slave master, right? We got the family name. We got the surname and the given name of the man who may or may not be responsible for this. If he was, then we have white admixture at that point. And if not, well, I don't know. That's about 10 generations back. It's pretty far back. And so, in any case, the issue is this: if I have a glass and I allow 3 drops of milk, 1, 2, 3, to enter this glass of water. This is no longer a homogeneous solution. It is no longer just the compound that it was before, right? It is now a heterogeneous mixture. It's no longer just H2O, because I added 3 drops of milk. There is a contaminant in the water. It's milk. So now, this is not a glass of this is not a glass that is purely of water. However, how would you identify the glass? Because identity is really what we're talking about here. How would you identify this glass? It is a glass of water with milk in it. This is water with milk in it. Now, conversely, we could reverse that, and I could have a glass that is filled with milk. And I can decide to water it down with 3 droplets of water. It does not become water with milk in it. This is now milk with water in it. Right? The primary identity here, the cornerstone of the identity is milk. That's the base. That's what this actually is. It's milk with a contaminant. My first example was water with a contaminant. You see what I'm saying? And so if you are, and so what the majority of us are is we are yatsarali with contaminant. We have admixture from other nations. That is what has happened to us as a result of all the things we've been through in our diaspora. We are now mixed with the bloods of all our oppressors along the way. Okay? So that's what's in our gene pool now. The Negro has changed. Fundamentally, the Negro has changed. And that change is large, in many cases, largely diminutive. Okay? Until we start talking, including the Native Americans. Why? Because the European, the colonizer, the paleface, brought milk to our land. Brought milk to our land and sprinkled it into our glasses of living water. Do you understand that? They sprinkled milk into the glasses of living water. Now, listen to me. When you see the Native American and when you see the Latino, the issue with many of those whom you see is that they are oftentimes not what you think they are. Yes, they share Yatsarali blood. They share Yatsarali ancestry with you. But it is not their predominant ancestry. It's not the dominant. It's not the foundation. It's not the cornerstone of their identity. Even for the Native American who claims to be American Indian. Even though that is what they culturally hold on to, the thing they're culturally hanging on to is not their dominant identity by blood. Because genetically, they are European. Genetically, they're European. Before anything, they are far more European than anything else. Far more. No context. The same goes for Latinos as well as Native Americans. It's the same for both of them. They are far more European. Far more European than they are indigenous. Or than they are anything else. So what does that mean? It means that they are the colonizer with our blood in their midst. The Latino, if you do not know his genealogy, you cannot say whether or not he is a part of our tribes. Because many Latinos are actually the conquistador, not the Indian. But they share Indian blood. The conquistador today retains a modicum of Indian blood. Now, you can't go strictly by phenotype. Some of these people, they look, they despite how light they appear, they may actually genuinely be one of us. But how do you determine whether or not they are one of us? You are what you are most of. This is a shamanic principle that I am trying to teach you so that you can use this for discerning who is who going forward. And I want all of my people to start considering this logic. Just consider it, please. You are what you are most of. Why? For the same reason I just demonstrated a moment ago. Alright? If you travel through the hot springs of the mountains and find yourself standing in front of a koi pond in Appalachia, the koi pond is full of what? Koi fish. Now, you bring bass whom you have caught and then farm raised for generations, and you have many of them, and you free these bass into the koi pond. But you brought only so many, only what you could carry in your farm tanks, and you release them into the koi pond. They make up an incredibly diminutive proportion of the population of the koi pond. This has not become a bass pond. It is still a koi pond. It is a koi pond with bass in it. You understand? The only way it can become a bass pond is if bass take over the majority population of the pond. If they become the majority, then this becomes a bass pond with koi. That's how that works. The identity goes to the dominant population. The identity goes to the cornerstone of the content. The content of your blood is primarily the thing that makes up more than 50% of your blood. If there is any one thing that makes up more than 50% of your blood, you are that. So to be a Israelite person, to be a member of the congregation of Israel, you must be more than half Israelite. You must be. You have to be more than half Israelite in order to be a part of what we call the congregation of Israel. Alright? Now there is, outside of the congregation of Israel, a periphery. Of those who are mixed. Alright? There is a periphery of those who are mixed. Why? Because there will be those who come with us that are mixed with our blood, and there will be those who come with us into the kingdom who have none of our blood at all. And we will all be gathered together. Those who have none of our blood at all, they are sojourners in the kingdom of Yatzareo. And those sojourners are people who adhere to Torah. All right? They acknowledge and live by the instruction of the law of nature. Because they are following our example. We will lead, when we regather, we will lead many nations back into the fold. When we come back into the fold, we will bring many heathens with us. Okay? And just to demonstrate that point a little bit more thoroughly, you can go to Isaiah chapter 54, verses the first three verses of Isaiah 54. Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear. Yeah, sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear. Break forth into singing and cry aloud, thou that didst travail with child. Thou that didst not travail with child. Here's the key part. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith Yahweh. Who are the children of the desolate and who are the children of the married wife? The children of desolate means destroyed. Just right, desolate, ruins. That which is destroyed is left desolate. It is made desolate. It is left in ruins. Over and over, the prophets among our ancestors wrote about the desolate heritages. What they meant by that, you hear that term from Isaiah. You hear that term from Ezekiel. The desolate heritages are the inheritance. That's how you see it in King James Version. It's rendered by that exact phrase, desolate heritages. Go to Blue Letter Bible and just put that in the search, right? But for those of you who already know what I mean, awesome. You know what I'm talking about. Desolate heritages, right? That's the inheritances of all the tribes. But these inheritances have been conquered and destroyed by the enemy, because those tribes have been hauled off as captives, right? Taken as slaves by enemy nations, the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Medes and Persians. First the Medes separately, actually. We'll talk about that. But anyway, and so that's what we're talking about, the desolate heritages. There are more children of who? Children of Yatzarel, children of Yahweh. The anointed people, the Yatzaralim, meaning there are more Yatzaralim of the destroyed inheritances, the destroyed lands, than there are of the married wife. Why the married wife? The married wife signifies those Yatzaralim who remain faithful to Yahweh and therefore have not been taken away from the promised land. They still live in the promised land in Isaiah's day. That's why he's referring to them this way. Yahweh is saying through Isaiah, there are more children of the tribes that have gone into captivity because they were unfaithful to Yahweh. Then there are Yatzaralim who remain in the promised land for having been faithful to Yahweh. That's what he's saying. The faithful ones are the people in his day and in our day. So he's saying, Yahweh says, enlarge the place of thy tent, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thine habitations. Spare not, lengthen thy cords, and strengthen thy stakes. For thou shalt break forth on the right hand and the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make desolate cities to be inhabited. Expand your horizons, because you're gonna have, you who are still in the promised land, your seed, your offspring, your future generations are actually going to inherit, are going to consume the heathen nations. And when it says Gentiles, it means heathen nations of Yatzarel. The seed of those who remain, the seed of the remnant, will consume the Yatzarelim who have been scattered already. Who's left in the promised land at that time? Judah, along with Benjamin and the Levites that were assigned to those tribes that had lots in those lands, in the lands of Benjamin and Judah, right? Those are the Yatzarelim who are left, and their seed, their offspring, it's saying, will eventually swell to absorb the northern tribes, the remnant of the northern tribes who get preserved through the diaspora. That is what has happened here in America. Because, you see, many of them who remained in the promised land after that ended up in Africa and Europe, actually. But they came to America and ended up consuming many of the Indians who were Yatzarelim. They consumed the Yatzarelim here. Most of them from Africa went to South America. They actually went to South America and the Caribbean primarily. Only 388,747 slaves came from Africa to the North American mainland. I've covered that over and over on my channel. You've got to do your research if you don't already know that. Those slaves who came to mainland North America were incredibly small in number. 388,747 slaves from Africa to the North American mainland over the course of 200 years. And at the end of that 200 years, we had 4.4 million. We were 4.4 million strong. 10 times as many people, more than 10 times as many people as were brought. And experts say, and I've covered this on my channel multiple times, experts say it's an impossible birth rate in that amount of time. Why? Because many of the people being counted as coming from Africa were actually Indians. That's because the birth rate math doesn't work. They were Indians, and I've demonstrated how they were Indians in multiple videos on my channel. You got to do it. Please, just check it out. Just check it out. But you're right about the fact that those Indians had come from Asia, and that certain American Indians, not all, but certain American Indians are indeed Yatzarelim. And so those Indians who look like us, anyone who looks like us in America today, is from one of these two groups. It's the only way you got here. Either you were already here, or you got brought here. But Judah consumed many. Judah and Benjamin together, and whatever Levites there were, that group ended up dispersing big time into Africa and somewhat through Europe, and ended up consuming many of our people here. Right? They consume. That's why Brazil looks like what it looks like. The population of Brazil, it looks like what it looks like because there are many heathen in Brazil. Seriously. There are many of them there. Judah is deep in Brazil. Judah is not as deep in the United States as you might think. But they did have their own population boom to an immeasurable extent. Not immeasurable because of how large it was, but immeasurable because we only have anecdotal evidence of the chattel slave praxis in North America of raping enslaved women to produce more to produce more slaves. We understand that is a practice that was done, but we can't determine, and it's been impossible for anthropologists to determine the extent to which it was done. Sometimes it seems like it didn't happen that often, and other times it seems like it happened a lot. And so most likely the truth is somewhere in the middle, and therefore still would not explain, especially considering that women were only a third of the slaves at most that were brought from Africa in the first place. It doesn't explain the population boom that the Negro had, so you know that a very large contingent of Negro population was in fact Indian. And what we're looking at here is Judah coming from Africa, where Judah had already absorbed many other Israelite tribes as well, who had escaped into Africa. We're going to talk about that in a future video. But they absorbed many of them there, and then came to America and absorbed more Israelites, more Israelite tribes. All right, and we're not just talking about God or Gad here. All right, when you talk about Native Americans, American Indians, when you talk about the people who are here, we're not just talking about Gad. All right, there was several tribes that came. Not necessarily all 10, but several tribes. And again, my very next presentation, the presentation I'm about to do, is going to trace exact routes for Yazarli diaspora, with regard to who came, and I'm starting with who came to America and how. That's for those of us who ascribe to mainstream thought, the idea that focusing on the idea that we came from Asia to America. All right. For those who ascribe to that, that's who that's for. But I want to show these clips before I get out of here. Before I get out of here, just so we can have this as a Sabbath thought for those of you who are observing Sabbath today. I don't knock anybody for observing Sabbath today, even though I do not consider it the Sabbath. It'll be the Sabbath that I observe is coming in a couple of days. We're about 3 days away, so this is midweek for me. But no problems. Anyway, the point is this: when you see the Native American, when you see the Latino, you don't have to just go by what they look like. The phenotype can fool you. It's possible that they are more than 50% Yazarli, and you can't tell just from looking at phenotype. Because sometimes the phenotype is off, or sometimes it just doesn't represent what the blood actually shows, what the blood actually is. Which is why I say you must do genealogical research on yourself and on anyone else whom you're trying to recruit. If you don't know the genealogy, don't be trying to tell them that they're Yazarli. Now they will be among these Gentile nations because it just means heathen nations. It just means heathens absorbed by Judeans. Okay? Many Yazarli are heathens today and were then. To be Gentile does not necessarily mean, at least to be goyim does not necessarily mean that you are not Yazarli. In fact, in most cases throughout the Tanakh, goyim, I won't say most, half the time, the term goyim is being used to refer to Yazarlim who have abandoned Derek Yahweh, or Derek Yahweh, the way of existence. they have abandoned the way of existence. You understand what I'm saying? Those are people who have abandoned the way of existence. The word Gentile and the word Goy do not perfectly align. They are not semantic equivalents. They're close. They're close. But they are not semantic equivalents. Not exactly. So, Gentile is an oversimplification. It's just saying anyone who is not an Israelite. But Goy is anyone who does not adhere to Torah, including Yatzarali, who do not adhere to Torah. Make sense? Make sense? Okay, so there are some, very light-skinned brothers out here who are not mixed. Certainly not within the 3 or 4 generations going back. Why do I say 3 or 4 generations? Yahuwah visits the iniquity of the father upon the son even to the 3rd and 4th generation. Why would Yahuwah do that? Yahuwah does that because you are your ancestor. You are your father. You are your mother. You are your grandfather. You are your grandmother. And so Yahuwah charges you for the same iniquity that you committed in a previous generation. That was you. And you are still living it out. This is the root of generational curses. And this is why we have generational curses. Our ancestors committed many sins, many generations over and over. And our iniquity was multiplied. And our judgment was multiplied because of it. And so we remain charged for the sins of our ancestors until a certain point. And as all of our bloodlines are beginning to exit out of the time period that our judgment was extended to, as each bloodline is completing that at a different time, we're all coming to the point where our bloodlines are beginning to complete their sentences, their punishments. And that's why the awakening is happening at the time that it's happening. The wind of awakening is upon us. The master of breath, Ruach, wind, master of breath, Hitzake Messi, in the Creek Indian language, is breathing life upon us once again, is breathing the wind of awakening upon us, just as she breathed the wind of deep sleep upon us aforetime, back in the ancient day. All right? And soon we will, as the 7 Algonquian sages prophesied, we will return to the sacred fire. What does that mean? The Algonquian Indians were saying that for what? These Algonquian Indian sages were saying we would return to the sacred fire. They're talking about the perpetual sacrifice burning in the temple. That is what we're returning to. We will once again have a sacrifice. Ezekiel foretold it. For those of you who think that that's not going to happen, in the 3rd temple, a sacrifice is perpetually burning. There will always be an offering. There must be an offering in the 3rd temple. That is the future temple, the temple we've not yet built. It is not the temple of Melech Shlomo, King Solomon. It is not the temple of Big Chief Solomon or great shaman Saru Bebel. It is neither of those 2 temples. Zerubbabel's temple was destroyed in 70 CE, right? The third temple will have a continual sacrifice, a continual burnt offering. Okay? That is the sacred fire. That is the sacred fire to which we must return. It has been prophesied by multiple Algonquian Indian sages. Alright? So, the Native Americans you're looking at, the majority of them they appear white, and the reason for that is because they are white. They are Europeans now. When you fall below 50% Yatzarali blood, you are no longer a part of the congregation of Yatzarel. Now, these are many of the people, many of the Gentiles who will accompany us in our sojourn back to our original state, our original condition as the anointed people. They will come with us. But They are not part of the congregation of Yatzareo. To tell them that they are Yatzaralim is misleading. And when you take a woman, because this is part of the problem. Part of the problem is many of you want to believe that as long as the father is a Yatzarali man, his child is also of Yatzarali. But that's not how that works either. It's not how that works either. The mother must be a Yatzarali woman as well. Otherwise, what you have is a Mamzer. Your children are Mamzerim. Bastards who cannot enter the congregation of Yatzarei. Why? Because you married a white woman. The mother is not Yatzarali. So the pedigree of the father determines the clan that you are from. The pedigree of the mother ensures that you are indeed Israelite. But you need both. That's how it works. I'm just telling you, that's how it works. You may not believe it, but that's how it works. Alright? I will be doing presentations on all of this stuff in the future. But I'm just trying to illustrate to you. These people primarily look white because they are white. And the fact that they have a little Yatzarali blood in them does not change that. An Englishman with some Yatzarali blood in him is still an Englishman. Alright? A lot of these Native Americans are Irish. You know? Scottish, German, English. These are the descendants of homesteaders, and these are the descendants of long hunters. These are the descendants of those who forged ahead in the philosophy of manifest destiny. They're the colonizers. The same goes for the Latinos. Many of the Latinos that you guys are claiming are Yatzarali are actually conquistadors. It's the people they conquered who are the Yatzarali. It's the brown people they left behind in their country when they sojourned up into the United States. When they came here, they migrated here, they left behind los morenos. Y los morenos son Yatzarali. The brown ones, the brown people. The brown people in their country. Piensa sobre de Guatemala. O piensa sobre de Honduras. Piensa sobre de Honduras. Y en Honduras, nosotros tenemos las garifunas. Y los garifunas son los morenos. Son los negros. ¿Entiendes? ¿Entiendes? Look at Honduras. Many of the average Hondurans are not actually our people. They are conquistadors who share a bit of our blood. On the other hand, there are some communities there where people are our color and have hair textures that are similar to ours, some exactly like ours. Many of them have the same hair we have, and many of them have isolated in their communities, so their phenotype has not changed that much, and they still look just like us. And they live off to themselves. They live out in the rural areas. Those are Israelites. Those are the descendants of Yatzarei. They are Igbo. That's who they are. They are Igbo, and also los indígenas. They are indigenous. Does that make sense? Because of course, again, we were the pure water. We were the living water. drop milk into that water, it's still water until there's more milk. All right. Let me show you these clips, and then we're gonna get out of here. I've been going on for too long. I'm gonna just drop these clips on you, and then I'm gonna cut transmission. All right. I did do a live stream not too long ago, where I was talking about how many of these Latinos voted for Trump, and now they are experiencing all of this backlash and drawback because they're all getting kicked out of this country. Even some of them who are documented are finding that ICE is coming for them now, and you know, there's been a lot of remorse from their end about this. They regret voting for Trump, but you as Yatsarali need to think about why they voted for Trump in the first place. It is because they are not on your side. They're not even on their own side. They will kick out those among their own people whom they consider to be less than themselves if they have a chance to give themselves status at the expense of their own people. They were willing to close those borders on their families and kick their countrymen out, their kinfolk, send them all back to Central and South America. Why? Because they want exclusive access to the white status that exists in this country. That's what they want. That's what they're here for. Because they're white and they know that this is where they belong. Yet they're being denied by the white people who are already here and saying, hey, we don't accept you because even though you look like us, we know there's Negro blood. And here, we've got Black Hebrew Israelites saying, oh, that don't let them divide us like that. We the same, we the same, we the same. Don't say that to the enemy. Some of these Latinos, many of them, are your enemy because they are the colonizers. They are the colonizer, and they've picked up some of your blood along the way when they were shedding your blood along the way. Your blood was shed all over the way, right? And in the process, they picked some of it up. But they are not doing it. They are not intended. You need to be more discerning about this. Please. Let me show these clips real quick and I'm going to get out of here.
It's the oppressor that's broken our spirit. But it's the spirit in you that's right now being awoken to be risen back up. You read Ezekiel chapter 37, go to the valley of dry bones. We're those dry bones. Right? And right now, we're trying to revive you and wake you up.
The 17, verse 23. Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants, the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day.
So they were carried to Assyria. Y'all see that? And so that's the history of the first instance of Israel literally being taken out of their land and being taken away captive, right? And that's where we get this history in Ezra. Go to 2nd Ezra 14 and verse 40, because from there, right, various captivities from the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Persian and Mede, right? Different things taking place, right? So let's get the history in 2nd Ezra that gives us a brief overview of that and how they ultimately came to America.
2nd Ezra chapter 14, chapter 13, verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, who Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive and carried them over the waters. And so came they into another land.
So so we just read that history, right? The Assyrians were the first one to take them away captive, but in the time of King Hosea, it say the king whom Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, right?
Nehemiah, Ezra.
Ezra. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Ezra in the Old Testament. I don't like saying the Bible because that separates the Apocrypha from the Bible. I say the Old Testament, the Apocrypha, and the New Testament. People say in the Apocrypha of the Bible. No, it's just the Old Testament, brother. It's all one book. Thank you, sir. We're going to read that a little bit. Let's read. I'm going to read a little bit of there.
1 Corinthians 11. Now, the laws that he's bringing out, these laws benefit us first, and then it benefits our community second.
That's right.
Because the stronger we build ourselves, the stronger we build our households, and then the stronger we build our community with our households.
Right.
We're missing that in society today. All the people you see on this 12 tribe chart, we're all in the same position. We like to pretend we're different people. We're not different people.
That's right.
God lumps us all the same. The blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, we're all the same. We're at the bottom of society. We like to pretend we're different people. Say, oh, they're black, we're brown, all of that stuff. It's foolishness. Right. Because the person that came over here and separated us all in the first place, like, look at this guy, Native American. And you're on, what, Ephraim? Puerto Rican, so Taino. That still means Native American, right?
Yes, right.
That still means Native American. So
Right.
who was here before the colonizer got here? And look at it, look at both of y'all. You're literally the same people.
That's
We're
right.
all the same people. We got one thing in common. We got put down on the bottom of society, but we don't keep God's laws. Let me give one more law. This is something you need to know. Anytime the truth of the Bible comes out, you're supposed to do this. Our people used to do this, and y'all think you'll recognize it as soon as you hear it. Read it.
The book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 3.
Right.
But I will have you know that the head of every man is Christ.
Now we believe in Christ. You believe in Christ? Well, most people don't realize that Christ is a black man. You read the description in the Bible, he's black. He's like your people were before. They were there before the colonizer showed up. That's why he's still that color, and you're just a little shades darker. I mean, lighter, right? We were all black at one point. Read.
Just because we read Deuteronomy 28 and 68, we think about always Southern Kingdom, but give me the book of Hosea, because the book of Hosea is written mainly for the Northern Kingdom. And here in the book of Hosea, as we get Hosea, give me chapter 8, start at 11. Because here the Most High is saying that that the Northern Kingdom, meaning Ephraim, is going to go into slavery too. And that's what some of these brothers that say, no, that brother over there, see that brother over there in the back, and that brother right there, they're not Israelites because they didn't go into slavery. But they haven't read the Bible. They don't read the Bible. So give me that. Start with 11.
Okay, are you seeing what I'm talking about? We're seeing that they are evangelizing. They are bringing in, they are recruiting Latinos who are white. Remember, Latino is not a color. There are white Latinos, there are black Latinos. They're recruiting Latinos who are white. They are recruiting Native Americans who are white. They are targeting those people. They are targeting the people of fair complexion. You see what I'm saying? And including them in Israelite heritage, which is a misunderstanding of how phenotype and genotype actually work. Again, I do caution against using strictly phenotype to figure out what a person is. It may be that some of these people that they're talking to here and there are actually more than half Yatsarali, but most likely that is not the case for the majority of these people. Sometimes the phenotype does not tell the whole story, and then sometimes it does. Sometimes phenotype can mislead you, and sometimes it gives you a textbook answer to what you're looking for. But what we have to acknowledge is that no due diligence is being done. Clearly, no due diligence is being done on the parts of these Black Hebrew Israelites to make sure that the due diligence that would have to be done would have to be genealogical. It would have to be genealogical. You know who you are, right? But you only truly know who you are by tracing the lineage of your mother and the lineage of your father, both of which, each of those lineages bifurcate into two bloodlines apiece. That is 4 bloodlines. Earlier I said that, I brought up the fact that Yahweh visits the iniquity of the father upon the son, even to the 3rd and 4th generation. When we're talking 3rd and 4th generation, you are generation 1. You counting backward, your parents represent generation 2, and then your grandparents are generation 3. Your great-grandparents are generation 4. All right? So your soul is a composite of at least that much. That is that is the bare minimum of what we must be talking about when we're talking about your spiritual identity. Your spiritual identity is not separate from your genetic identity. We have to stop. It was religion that tried to separate shamanism from science. Shamanism is the marriage of spirituality and science. The two were always supposed to be one. The shaman of old was the scientist. He was a meteorologist. He was a medicine man, the witch doctor. This is what we're talking about. The reason why you have medicine and doctor in there, those terms are there because it was science. Okay? They watched for the weather patterns. They were herbologists. The shaman, the priest, as you now call it, was a scientist. And that is because spirituality and science are one thing. It's religion that then divorces the two and tries to appropriate spirituality for a bunch of causes that it has no business being associated with when detached from science, the scientific method. Okay, and so that's the real problem that we're having here. You've got to recognize who we're talking about and what we're talking about. I want to use David as an example because earlier I was telling you, of course, before I showed you the clips, I showed you those clips, but before that I was talking about how you are what you are most of. That is the principle that I'm trying to convey in this live stream tonight, is that you are what you are most of, right? You are what you are most of. So in order to be an Israelite, you would have to be more than 50% Israelite. 51% or more is what would make you Israelite. Now, why would I say that? There are many black Hebrew Israelites who are going to call me out on that and say, no, you got to be 100% Israelite to be an Israelite. Well, here's the thing about that. 100% is mathematically impossible. And I say that because there is absolutely no way that over the course of 2,000 years, none of your ancestors, that over the course of 2,000 years, all of your ancestors, 2,500 years, all of your ancestors were Israelite. Especially considering that your ancestors, before leaving the Promised Land, mixed with a bunch of other people around them, their neighbors, before they even left. It's why they left. They were kicked out of the Promised Land by the Creator for mixing with non-Israelite people groups, right? So let's start there. 100% is not actually possible. This is why it's going to be necessary for the Levitical priesthood to have their blood purified. And the Creator talks about that. The Creator actually says that in Scripture. And she shall purify the sons of Levi. And that is a phrase that has ended up in songs. Handel's Messiah, for example. So some of you may know that. We may all be familiar with that. You know, and we know this though because it's a thing that is supposed to happen in the future. That is what is going to happen at the time of the gathering, which is the culmination of the awakening. When we get to the point of the gathering, a pure language will be returned to us. The priesthood will be restored. All of these things will happen organically too, by the way. It's not going to be a magical thing. It's not going to be a magical thing. There is going to be biological cleansing of the people, and there is going to be a revival, a linguistic revival of the Hebrew language. So we're going to experience all of those things. But and we can talk about that more in future presentations. But my point is this: I want to talk about King David because what I'm saying is none of us are 100%. 99% is the absolute most. 98% even is the absolute most you could expect to see. And if you're not good at math, maybe you don't understand how ratios work. So to you feel like that's not true, and you're not doing But be honest with yourself first of all about whether or not you're good at math. Let's start with that. Because if you're not good at math, then that means you probably don't understand ratios very well. And if you don't understand ratios very well, then you're not a good. Your own mind is not going to have a good barometer for what is a realistic percentage of the Israelite bloodline for you to have. it is realistic, I think, to expect that many of us could be in the 90th percentile. I think that's actually reasonable. I do think that that's reasonable for some of us. But we have to recognize that what we're talking about when we talk about Israelite identity on a genetic level today is probably more so about the fact that you are what you are most of. Therefore, you are 51% or more Israelite. And what we can surmise is that the way that that would be the case is, first of all, yes, this phenotype is an indicator of the original phenotype of the Atzaralim, and so therefore you can correlate with your ancestors this way and have a pretty good representation of you being in line with that identity. But more so, what we need to be looking for is your genealogy and taking an account of your generations as far back as we can go. The bare minimum of what you can do is get back to your great grandparents, so that we can know that you are at least 4 generations Israelite. As far as you know, you have nothing but Israelite in your first the most recent 4 generations, counting yourself as generation 1. Now, I strongly encourage you to go way further back than that, because of course you could have generation 5 include 2 white people, and that would change things pretty significantly. But again, as long as you're 51% Israelite or more, here's why I say that. David was mixed. David was mixed, and yet there was absolutely no excluding of David from the congregation of Yisrael. There was a commandment, the Mamzer law. I already talked about this. The Mamzer law excluded those who had a non-Yatzarali parent. That's what a Mamzer is. Bastard. Someone who has one parent that is Yatzarali and another parent who is not. All right. If you have one parent that is Yatzarali and another parent that is not, what does that make you? It makes you 50% Israelite. And 50% Israelite, according to Mamzer law, cannot enter into the congregation of Yatzarel. So 50% we know is out. That's your cutoff point. That is your cutoff point. Why? Because one of your parents, whether mother or father, of course, Blue Letter Bible's references are going to cite Jewish tradition, modern Jewish tradition, to tell you that it's specifically talking about whether or not your mother is Israelite. But it's not just your mother; it's your father as well, which we know because your clan was determined by your father. But if your father wasn't an Israelite, you would not have pedigree to any particular clan, right? So that would mess that up too. And so we know how that works. That's how we know that it's got to be it's both mother and father. It's not just one or the other. It's both. You need 2 Israelite parents in order to be an Israelite. And if you do not have 2 Israelite parents, then that is going to make you 50-50. And if you're 50-50, you are beneath the threshold for what can enter into the congregation of Yatzarel. Now, the congregation of Yatzarel did include David, despite the fact that he was mixed. And why is that? It is because he was not a 50-50 mix. Ruth was his grandmother. Ruth's son was Obed. Ruth's son was Obed. And the son of Obed was Yishai, Jesse. And the son of Jesse, of course, was David. Right? Ruth, though, Ruth was actually his great-grandmother. I'm sorry, I said his grandmother. Ruth was his great-grandmother, actually. But Ruth herself was a Moabite. If you know anything about the story of Ruth, you know that. That's the first thing you should know about Ruth, is that she was a Moabite. If you don't know anything else about her, that is the one takeaway that is most significant about her as a person from the narrative we are given about her life. And so Ruth was a Moabite, which is not an Israelite. Now, keep in mind, a Moabite is a Hebrew. However, Yahweh already had said that, in fact, let me put it this way. when it is said that a Mamzer, a bastard, shall not enter into the congregation of Yisrael even to his 10th generation, it said that. The very next verse also says, a Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of Yisrael even to his 10th generation. Moabites are not acceptable just because they're Hebrew, which lets you know that anyone who's not Hebrew is also not acceptable. There's no one you can mix with. If you can't even mix with a Hebrew and it be okay, then it's not okay, period, right? However, as emphatic as that sounded, here's the thing. She was a Moabitess. David was well within 10 generations. He was only the 4th generation from her. And you count back to Ruth from David. If you count David as 1, Ruth is the 4th generation. David, Dawid, Yishai, obeyed Ruth. Understand? So that's 4 generations right there. That's 4 generations. She's the 4th generation back from David. But she is a Moabite. And yet, Yahweh anointed King David. Yahweh anointed David as king, is what I'm trying to say. Yahweh anointed David to be king, which there's no deeper into the congregation that one can even be than to be king. That is as deep into the congregation as you can go. So what do we make of this? What we make of this is that this signifies, and let's first appraise his heritage real quick. We said 4 generations, right? And we're operating under the understanding of that Ruth should be the only non-Israelite ancestor in those 4 generations, right? So what we're talking about is then, therefore, David being 75% Israelite. 75%. Right? He gets 0% from Ruth, and 50. He gets 0% from Ruth, 100% from her husband, whose name I can't remember. That is 50% averaged together when you average them together, and then so that means that Obed was half and half. He was literally 50-50. He could not enter into the congregation. However, he has a son with an Israelite woman, and that's Yishai, Jesse, who is then we're taking the full 50% from Obed. We're taking the full 100% from his wife. The two to put together, average together. The two averaged together would actually be 75%. So then you take the 70. So actually, David's not 75%. It's Jesse who's 75%. That's what it is. Jesse's 75%, and David is 87.5%. I think that's what it is. David would be 85.5%. Because what happens is then you take Jesse, and he's 75%. And you take an Israelite woman, 100%, average those two together, 87.5% should be what you get. 87.5%. So David would be 87.5% Israelites, but still not even 90th percentile. Yet king of Yisrael. All right. So we're not suggesting that one non-Israelite ancestor can just throw all of this off, unless that ancestor is your direct parent. That's when it throws this off. Why? Because the parent makes you only 50% Israelite, which is not enough. Because that qualifies you as exactly fitting the definition of what Mamzer is. See what I'm saying? So it's important. So it's important to understand that it is important to understand that that you are able to be in the congregation. We should all hope that you are able to be in the congregation without being 100% Israelite, which is necessary for us all, I think, because it's mathematically improbable for any of us to expect that we would be 100% Israelites at this stage. Nobody's 100%. But what we're looking for is more than 50%. What we're looking for is you are what you are most of. If your DNA is mostly Israelite DNA, that is Israelite. And to the best of our ability, we must use genealogical research to determine the likelihood that that is who we are. Right? And that's all you got. That's all you can do. That's the best you can do. So the problem is that for a lot of these Latinos, we're talking about people who are 75%, 87.5% in the opposite direction. Don't just be going by, well, I'm not going to talk about that. I'll say that privately. I was about to go into the whole DNA testing thing. We'll talk about that later in another presentation. But my point is, that's what we're looking at. You see who these Black Hebrew Israelites are recruiting. You see who they're talking to. You see who they're focusing on in those videos. And of course, they're focusing on our people typically. But you see who they're privileging here when it comes to the Latin American community. They're looking directly at any of them, regardless of color. And that is absolutely not how to go about this. You want to make sure that you're pulling in people who are highly likely to be Israelites for real. Okay? And the way you do that is to look for the brown ones. You know? Some of these very fair-skinned Latinos, maybe they are just fair-skinned and the phenotype is not telling the full story and they actually are Israelites because they actually are over 50%. But the problem is you're approaching primarily them. And you need to be finding the brown ones because the brown ones are the ones who actually belong with you. They're the ones who are in your situation. They are experiencing what you're experiencing. The white ones over here, most of them are almost definitely colonized. Their phenotype is probably telling the story that it's telling because of the fact that they are predominantly European. You need to be thinking about that.